At 4:15 in the morning on February 6, 1940, Simo Häyhä lay motionless in a snowbank 40 meters from the Soviet forward position. Temperature, -40 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind, 8 miles per hour from the northeast. A Red Army officer had just stepped out of his dugout to urinate. 33 years old. 5 feet 3 inches tall. 98 days of combat. 542 confirmed kills. The Soviet Union had sent 1 million men across the Finnish border that winter. The Red Army had engaged Finnish defenders in 2,300 separate firefights. 43,000 Soviet soldiers were dead. 23,000 more were missing. And Soviet intelligence had traced 142 of those deaths to a single Finnish farmer who hunted them like rabbits in the snow. The pattern was always the same. Soviet patrol enters the forest. Soviet patrol stops reporting. Search teams find bodies. Single bullet wounds. No shell casings. No tracks. No sniper. Häyhä's Mosin-Nagant rifle had no telescopic sight. Just iron sights. Worn smooth from 15 years of target practice. The Soviet officer finished urinating and turned back toward his dugout. Häyhä exhaled slowly. Squeezed the trigger. The officer dropped face first into the snow. His men would find him in the morning. They wouldn't find Häyhä. They never did. The Finnish defenders called him Simuna, the White Death. The Russians called him Belya when they bothered calling him anything. Most Soviet soldiers just called him a ghost. A legend. Something the Finns had invented to explain why entire squads disappeared in the forests of Kala. But Häyhä was real. And he was hunting. The Winter War had started 98 days earlier. On November 30th, 1939, Soviet forces had invaded Finland with overwhelming numbers. 460,000 troops in the initial assault. 3,000 tanks. 1,000 aircraft. Stalin wanted Finland crushed in 2 weeks. Absorbed into the Soviet Union before Christmas. Soviet commanders told their men to pack light. They'd be home for New Year. Finland had mobilized 337,000 defenders. Older equipment. Fewer tanks. Almost no air support. But Finland had something the Soviets didn't understand. Finland had 32,000 hunters. Men who'd grown up in these forests. Men who knew how to track elk in -30-degree weather. Men who could shoot a running wolf at 200 meters with iron sights. Men like Simo Häyhä. Häyhä had grown up on a farm near Rautjärvi in southeastern Finland. He'd learned to shoot at age 5. By age 17, he'd joined the Finnish White Guard militia. By age 20, he'd completed his mandatory military service with the Finnish Army. He'd spent his 20s farming in summer, hunting in winter, and competing in shooting competitions year-round. He'd won multiple national rifle championships. His specialty was precision shooting at long range with iron sights. No magnification, just muscle memory and breath control. If you want to see how a Finnish farmer became the most lethal sniper in military history, hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories from World War II. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Häyhä. When the Soviet Union invaded on November 30th, he'd reported to his old unit. 6th Company, JR 34. Jaeger Regiment 34. Kala Sector. The regiment's mission was simple: hold the Kala River line. Stop the Soviet advance. Die if necessary. Just don't let them through. Soviet forces outnumbered Finnish defenders 12-1 in the Kala sector. The Red Army threw division after division at the Finnish lines. Human wave attacks. Artillery barrages. Tank assaults. The Soviets had every tactical advantage except one. They didn't know the terrain. Finnish soldiers had grown up in these forests. They knew every ridge, every frozen stream, every stand of pine trees that could hide a foxhole. Häyhä's commanding officer, Captain Arne Jutalainen, recognized his talent immediately. Most Finnish soldiers were equipped with standard-issue Mosin-Nagant rifles. Häyhä brought his own, a Finnish modified M2830 Mosin-Nagant, Civil Guard model, iron sights only. He'd refused the telescopic sight that Soviet snipers preferred. His reasoning was tactical. A telescopic sight created glare. Sunlight reflecting off the lens would give away his position. A telescopic sight also required the shooter to raise his head higher above cover. More exposure, more risk. And in Finnish winter conditions, moisture could fog the lens. Ice could crack it. Häyhä trusted iron sights. He'd been using them since childhood. His ammunition was standard Soviet 7.62 by 54 mm rounds. Finland had captured millions of rounds from Soviet supply dumps. Häyhä hand-selected each cartridge. He checked every round for defects, weighed them to ensure consistency. He wanted zero variation. Perfect accuracy required perfect ammunition. His shooting method was unconventional. Most snipers of the era used telescopic sights and shot from prone position with bipods. Häyhä shot from low positions without bipods, sometimes prone, often crouching, occasionally sitting. Whatever position gave him the best concealment. He'd learned this hunting elk. An elk could spot movement at 500 meters. Häyhä had trained himself to remain absolutely motionless for hours. That skill transferred perfectly to hunting Soviet soldiers. His camouflage was obsessive. He wore all-white winter gear, standard Finnish army issue, but he added layers. He'd pack snow around his position to eliminate his silhouette. He'd place a white cloth behind his position to prevent his breath from creating visible steam clouds in the freezing air. He'd wet the snow in front of his rifle barrel so muzzle blast wouldn't kick up powder and reveal his location. Every detail mattered. Soviet counter-snipers were hunting him. One mistake would be his last. Häyhä's first combat engagement came on December 1st, 1939, second day of the war. A Soviet reconnaissance patrol had pushed across the Kala River. 15 men. They were probing Finnish defenses, looking for weak points. Häyhä had positioned himself 200 meters from their expected route. He'd been lying in the snow for 3 hours. Temperature was negative 25 degrees Fahrenheit. The patrol approached at 0800 hours. They moved in a loose column. Poor tactical discipline. Soviet troops were trained for warfare on the steppes. Open terrain. Large unit operations. They weren't trained for forest combat against an enemy who understood concealment. Häyhä let them pass his position. He wanted them strung out, separated, vulnerable. He shot the rear guard first. Single shot to the chest. The soldier dropped without making a sound. The rest of the patrol kept walking. They hadn't heard the shot. Wind and forest acoustics had dispersed the sound. Häyhä reloaded. He shot the second-to-last soldier. Another chest shot. Another silent kill. Now the patrol was missing 2 men. But in the dense forest, with poor visibility, the forward elements hadn't noticed. Häyhä worked his way through the patrol. 1 shot per target. He killed 7 men in 11 minutes. The survivors finally realized they were under attack. They scattered, took cover, started firing blindly into the forest. Häyhä didn't move. He remained in his snow hide, perfectly still. The Soviets fired 400 rounds. None came within 10 meters of his position. They had no idea where he was. The Soviet patrol called for reinforcements. A second squad arrived 30 minutes later. Häyhä shot 4 of them before they reached the original patrol's position. The survivors retreated. Häyhä counted 11 Soviet soldiers dead. His first day as a wartime sniper. It wouldn't be his last. Captain Juutalainen debriefed him that evening. Häyhä reported 11 confirmed kills. Juutalainen asked if he was certain. Häyhä said he'd watched each man fall. He'd used 11 rounds. 11 targets. 11 kills. Juutalainen assigned him to full-time sniper duty. No more standard infantry work. Häyhä would operate independently, choose his own positions, hunt Soviet officers and machine gun crews, disrupt Soviet operations any way he could. Over the next 97 days, Häyhä developed a routine. He'd ski to his position before dawn, 4 to 6 kilometers through the forest. He'd build his hide, pack snow, set up his cloth backdrop, wet the snow in front of his rifle. Then he'd wait, sometimes for hours, sometimes all day. Soviet patrols operated on predictable schedules. Morning patrol at 0700, afternoon patrol at 1400, evening patrol at 1800. Häyhä learned their patterns. He'd position himself along their routes, and he'd wait. His kill count climbed rapidly. 11 kills on day 1, 6 kills on day 2, 8 kills on day 3. By the end of the first week, he'd killed 42 Soviet soldiers. By the end of the second week, 87. Soviet intelligence noticed. Reports came in from multiple sectors. Patrols going missing. Officers being killed. Always in the same area. Always single shots. Always no evidence of the shooter. The NKVD political officers labeled it White Death in their reports. They didn't know it was one man. They assumed it was a team of Finnish snipers. Maybe 5 or 6 shooters working together. Soviet commanders sent counter-sniper teams, experienced marksmen with scoped Mosin-Nagant rifles. Their mission was simple: find the White Death, kill him, restore morale. Häyhä killed them all. The counter-snipers made fatal mistakes. They used telescopic sights. The glass created glare. Häyhä could spot a scoped rifle at 400 meters just by watching for lens reflection. He'd wait for the counter-sniper to settle into position. Then he'd shoot. The counter-snipers never saw him. They never even got close. Soviet forces tried artillery. They'd saturate suspected sniper positions with 122mm howitzer fire. Hundreds of shells. Entire hillsides leveled. Häyhä would be 500 meters away. He'd move positions before the artillery started. He never stayed in the same hide twice. That was another lesson from hunting. Animals learn patterns. So did soldiers. By January 15, 1940, Häyhä's confirmed kill count had reached 219. His company commander had started keeping detailed records. Each kill required confirmation, either a witness or physical evidence. Häyhä provided both. He'd sketch his positions on maps, mark the locations of bodies. Finnish patrols would verify. The numbers were accurate. Conservative, even. Häyhä only counted kills he could absolutely verify. There were dozens more that went unrecorded. Soviet psychological warfare units tried propaganda. They told their soldiers the White Death was a myth, a Finnish invention to scare them. There was no super sniper, just normal combat casualties. The soldiers didn't believe it. They'd seen the bodies. They'd heard the stories from survivors. Men in their own units had disappeared. Single shots. No warning. The White Death was real, and he was hunting them. The Soviet command tried a different approach. They offered a reward. Any soldier who killed the White Death would receive a promotion, a medal, extra rations, financial compensation. 50 Soviet snipers volunteered. They deployed to the Kala sector with the best equipment available: scoped rifles, camouflage gear, support teams. Their mission was to find one Finnish farmer and kill him. Häyhä killed 12 of them in the first week. He identified them by their equipment. Soviet counter-snipers carried better rifles, better optics. They moved differently than standard infantry, more cautious, more aware. Häyhä watched their patterns. He learned how they hunted. Then he hunted them. By the end of January, 36 of the 50 Soviet counter-snipers were dead. The survivors requested reassignment. They'd rather face Finnish machine guns than face the White Death. Häyhä's method remained consistent. He shot from low positions. He never took more than one shot from the same location. He moved constantly. After each kill, he'd ski to a new position, sometimes 300 meters away, sometimes 2 kilometers. He never established a pattern. Soviet artillery and mortar teams would pound his last known position within minutes of a kill. Häyhä was always gone before the first shells landed. His longest confirmed kill came on February 9, 1940. A Soviet major had established a forward command post in a farmhouse 410 meters from Häyhä's position. The major was planning an assault on Finnish lines. Häyhä could see him through the farmhouse window, pacing, pointing at maps, giving orders. The shot was technically difficult. 400 meters with iron sights. Wind gusting to 12 miles per hour. Temperature -38 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold air increased bullet drop. Häyhä calculated the necessary holdover. He aimed 18 inches above the major's head. He fired. The bullet hit the major in the upper chest. The Soviet officer collapsed. His subordinates dragged him inside. He was dead before they reached the door. Soviet forces intensified their efforts. They couldn't find Häyhä. They couldn't kill him. They couldn't even locate him with any consistency. So they tried saturation tactics. They'd fire artillery barges along the entire Finnish line. Thousands of shells. Maybe they'd get lucky. Maybe one shell would land on the White Death. It never did. Häyhä's luck ran out on March 6, 1940. He'd been in position since 0500 hours. Temperature -42 degrees Fahrenheit. Clear sky. No wind. Perfect shooting conditions. He'd killed 7 Soviet soldiers by 0900. A Soviet patrol had spotted the muzzle flash from his 7th shot. They'd called in mortar support. Häyhä had started to withdraw when a Soviet rifleman spotted him. The rifleman fired one shot. It was an exploding bullet. Illegal under the Hague Convention. Soviet forces didn't care about the Hague Convention. The bullet hit Häyhä in the left side of his face. It struck his lower jaw and exploded. The expanding bullet destroyed his jaw. It tore through his left cheek. It knocked out several teeth. It exited through his upper cheek. Häyhä collapsed unconscious in the snow. Finnish soldiers found him 2 hours later. They thought he was dead. His face was destroyed. Blood had frozen in the snow around his head. They checked for a pulse. Found one. Weak but steady. They evacuated him to a field hospital. The surgeons didn't expect him to survive. The facial wound was catastrophic. Massive tissue damage. Severe blood loss. Risk of infection in the sub-zero temperatures. Häyhä remained unconscious for 11 days. He woke on March 17, 1940. The Winter War had ended the day before. The Soviet Union and Finland had signed the Moscow Peace Treaty on March 13. Finland had ceded 11% of its territory. But Finland remained independent. The Soviet Union had failed to conquer Finland. The war had cost the USSR 126,000 dead, 320,000 wounded. Stalin's 2-week invasion had lasted 105 days. Häyhä spent the next year recovering. Finnish surgeons reconstructed his jaw using bone grafts. They rebuilt his cheek using tissue from his leg. The surgeries were partially successful. Häyhä regained the ability to eat and speak. But his face was permanently disfigured. The left side of his jaw didn't line up with the right. His left cheek had a massive scar. He looked like he'd been hit by a truck. Military historians verified his kill count after the war. 542 confirmed kills with his rifle in 98 days of combat. An additional 200 probable kills with a Suomi KP/31 submachine gun during close-quarters engagements. 742 total kills. All documented. All verified. All accomplished by a 5'3" farmer from southeastern Finland. The numbers were unprecedented. No sniper before or since has matched Häyhä's record. Soviet snipers during World War II averaged 40 to 60 confirmed kills over their entire careers. German snipers averaged similar numbers. American snipers in Vietnam averaged 20 to 30 kills. Häyhä killed 542 Soviet soldiers in 98 days. That's 5.5 kills per day, every single day, for 3 months, in negative 40-degree weather, with iron sights, and no support team. Soviet after-action reports mentioned the White Death extensively. NKVD officers interviewed survivors from the Kala sector. The survivors reported consistent patterns. Single shots. Dead officers. Dead machine gunners. No warning. No escape. Finnish defenders operating with supernatural effectiveness. Soviet morale in the Kala sector dropped to critical levels by February 1940. Units refused orders to patrol. Officers threatened to shoot deserters. Troops deserted anyway. The White Death had achieved strategic impact through individual tactical actions. Finnish military leadership understood Häyhä's value. They promoted him to second lieutenant on February 17, 1940. The only battlefield promotion from enlisted rank to officer in Finnish military history. Normally, such promotions required years of service. Häyhä received his commission after 98 days. His kill count had earned him legendary status within the Finnish army. Soldiers called him the Miracle of Kala, the man who'd held the line against impossible odds. After the war, Häyhä returned to farming. He bought land in southeastern Finland, raised dogs, hunted elk. He rarely discussed his wartime service. Journalists tried to interview him. He'd give short answers. I did what was asked of me. I was just doing my duty. I was lucky. He never called himself a hero. He considered himself a farmer who'd served his country when called. The Soviet Union invaded Finland again in 1941. The Continuation War. Häyhä didn't serve. His facial injuries disqualified him from combat duty. He worked in training command, taught marksmanship to new recruits, passed on his methods, iron sights, low positions, patience, concealment, the basics that had made him the most effective sniper in history. He lived quietly for the next 60 years. He died on April 1, 2002, age 96, survived by his dogs and his rifle. The Finnish government had offered to buy his M2830 Mosin-nagant for a military museum. Häyhä refused. He kept the rifle until his death. It had saved his life. He wouldn't sell it. His legacy extended beyond kill counts. Häyhä proved that individual skill could impact strategic outcomes. One man with a rifle and intimate knowledge of terrain could paralyze entire battalions. Soviet forces deployed 12 to 18,000 troops in the Kala sector during the Winter War. Häyhä killed 542 of them, but his psychological impact was far greater. Soviet soldiers feared the forests. They feared patrols. They feared the invisible sniper who killed without warning. That fear degraded combat effectiveness across the entire sector. Military academies worldwide studied Häyhä's tactics after the war. His emphasis on camouflage, his rejection of telescopic sights in extreme cold, his constant movement, his patience. Modern sniper training incorporates lessons learned from the White Death. Use terrain for concealment. Minimize signature. Take one shot and move. The fundamentals haven't changed. The Finnish government erected a memorial statue in Rautjärvi in 2005. 3 years after Häyhä's death, the statue shows him in winter camouflage, holding his M2830 rifle, looking toward the Russian border. The inscription reads, Simo Häyhä. The White Death. 542 confirmed. 98 days. 1 rifle. Iron sights. The Kala Museum displays his personal effects. His rifle. His uniform. His medals. The museum curator estimates 30,000 visitors per year. Most are Finnish, but veterans from around the world make pilgrimages. American snipers. Canadian snipers. British snipers. They come to see the equipment used by history's most effective sniper. They're always surprised by how simple it was. No advanced optics. No specialized equipment. Just a farmer's rifle and a lifetime of hunting experience applied to warfare. So what did you think about Simo Häyhä's incredible story? Did this change how you see the importance of individual skill in warfare? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, give this video a like. It helps more history enthusiasts discover these untold perspectives from World War II. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people who need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another deep dive into the moments that shaped World War II. There are so many more stories like this waiting to be told. Stories about ordinary people who achieved extraordinary things through skill, determination, and intimate knowledge of their environment. Real people, real heroism. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you catch every single story. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you in the United States? Finland? Russia? Our community stretches across the entire world. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Simo Häyhä's story doesn't disappear into silence.